Hello and welcome to BETV. This week we have Sanjay Menon, MD Publicis Sapient India. Hello Sanjay, welcome to the
Hi.
show. So you just went for a global rebranding, right? So how does that change the entire positioning? From what I was reading, the firm is thought to be more of a consultancy firm. So how will you change the entire perception now?
All right, okay. So maybe I'll take a step back and just tell you a little bit more about us, right? So the idea of the rebranding was to really, bring about an integration of our business globally, right? So what we realized was we've always been doing, partnering with our clients in the areas of being able to create compelling experiences for their consumers through our design capability, working with them on complex technology solutions, as well as helping them leverage the power of data. But we were also doing this through different brands. So what this now allows us to do is to really simplify and clarify the way we think about it. So Publicis Sapient is really about bringing all of this together into one narrative, which helps our clients reimagine their business models, which is what all the clients are seeking to do today, as they kind of face the future and figure out how do they win in a more disrupted market that's kind of happening at this point in time.
Sure. When you say it allows you to bring all your pieces together, so can you give us an example of if there was some division which worked in silo earlier, now will be working under the same broad umbrella?
Yeah, see, the one thing we've always done well is as teams we've always looked to work together, but as brands we've had multiple brands out there, right? So what this helps clarify to clients is that, okay, Publicis Sapient is my partner of choice as I make my transformation journey, because what they're able to do is to not only start with from a strategy standpoint, right? Help me look at what business should I be in? What should my business model be, which will be a winning model given the disruption from either competition I wasn't expecting or a landscape that's changing. But then the same strategy has to now translate into what does it mean in terms of the consumer experience I need to design for? It doesn't stop there. Then, right, how do you create the power of technology through complex engineering to now bring this to life and then use data to now finish that loop? Because what's also changing in the market is that it's no longer I need to move from point A to B. It's I'm moving all the time because that market's changing as quickly because the consumer is that discerning and that spoiled at this point in time. So it's really being able to be that one partner who can thread the entire narrative from strategy through not only making it real, but actually making it intelligent in terms of how do you feed it forward.
So when you now look at launching a brand or relaunching a brand or working on a particular campaign, how the strategy is very different to what it was?
See, I think our strategy is still the same, which is it's very simply put to help our clients perform at a level of exponential growth, because they in turn provide great value to their consumers.
But the execution has changed, right?
Correct. So now what I think what it does is it now lets us very easily bring together the transformation narrative with our clients, saying, look, this is the overall journey you need to make. And again, not because we know the point B, but we know the direction in which point B lies. And what this allows us to do is to have them very simply understand, okay, there's Publicis Sapient I'm working with, it's not brand X, brand Y, all under a kind of a different brand umbrella. So it's a very simple clarifying view for how our clients understand our message and know who we are. On the operating model, it's not as much per se a change because these teams were anyway working with each other and leveraging capabilities across each other. But I think it just makes it much clearer for our clients to not only understand who we are, but be able to see that clarity right through in terms of therefore how the teams engage with them.
So you would have, you're working for international clients, right? So if I have to put a case in point of say a retail company which also has an e-tail presence, how do you tackle that need now? How, is it like devise a campaign which can be shown across, medium of channels, or there is something that goes beyond it,
Yeah, see, it goes beyond that, because the question we would first start with as a retailer, what is the future of retail? Why would you win in the next 3 to 5 years? And depending on where that retailer is, you'd start the conversation of saying, where do you need to be, right? And if you look at, for example, if you pick something like retail, it's not only about which channel, because at the end of the day, the consumers in the retail space are expecting you where they are, right? And consumers are as much in the physical space as much as they're in the digital space. They're as much through a mobile channel as they are through, let's say the physical channel as well. So for us, the question then is, okay, holistically, how do you make this move, right? And what's the journey you make? The other, I think, thing to also keep in mind is that for all the current incumbents, the established players, their biggest move is also how do you make yourself agile? Because the people who are winning, the current adage is that, it's not the big that take the small, the fast will take the slow, right? So if the fast are going to take the slow, how do you bring yourself to have that agility to move faster? Because if you look at most of the firms that are disrupting any of the categories, the one fundamental inherent quality they bring to the table is agility, which makes them be able to pivot faster to meet the consumer at the next need. As the need emerges, sometimes before the need emerges. So if you now look at people in the retail space, therefore, it's not just, what do I do with the campaign, but the promise that I make with that campaign, how does that come through to the company that they see, the brand that they experience when they actually show up either at my store or on my site or using my app, right through to the fulfillment, and what is the experience after that. So in a way, if you think about it, it's right from what you established with a lot of the communications piece around storytelling and what the brand promises, all the way through to kind of making that real, right?
In a way, it's all about experience now.
Totally. I mean, we coined this almost 20 years back that the brand is the experience and the experience is the brand.
In India, it's not a revenue-driven business, right? It's more of a talent-driven business, which is very strange in this day and hour because everything is ROI-driven. So, A, how do you justify running an entire shop here? And B, so what are does your talent actually work for international client? How do you manifest the entire thing?
Okay, so I'll take a minute just to tell you what India means for us, right? And you can just make out by my tone that it's something that I'm quite passionate about. See, for us, India has been a core of our business, right? It's not an outpost. It's just not one more location. And 20 years back, so we've been in India for almost 2 decades now. And what we've been really excited, by India is just the caliber of talent that you have, which actually can play at a global canvas. So the way we also operate as a company is through global teams. So, we have people who are based in India who are part of our teams, but they are part of the teams in terms of a global context. So what I mean by that is, and let's stick with the retail example, right? So if I have a retailer I'm working with, let's say in New York, the team based in India is as much in that direct business context. They're as much part of understanding all those 4 pillars as talked about. What's the strategy or where the client is going? What experience is going to be compelling? How do we make it real and how do you keep it intelligent, right? So because of that, what happens is there are 2 things. One, you need talent that can operate at that level of maturity, right? And when you have that, you can actually bring a lot of non-linear impact to the client, because otherwise most people are driven by line of sight, which is, I have a project in New York, guess my team is going to be from where? From New York. For us, it's the clients in New York, but the team is from anywhere in the world. So what it also allows us to do when I talked about agility earlier, this is agility in our space, is that you're able to fluidly move capability and talent to where we need it to create impact. So for us, India is, it's something that we are hugely focused on. And we see the level of caliber of talent, whether it's data, when it comes to high-end consulting talent, when it comes to design and creative talent, or, obviously, engineering, which I think we've got absolutely, a very deep market here from a talent standpoint.
So what is the staff strength you have currently, and do you plan to add more in this year?
So, we talk numbers only at the overall group level, but I can tell you as a direction of travel, we're absolutely, looking at rapidly, growing in India. It's one of the markets we're excited about, as I said, from a talent standpoint. It is a very key market for us in terms of how we grow our people.
So if you're going to add more talent, which are the areas that you look? You look at deep tech, you look at engineering, and which are the divisions that you'll actually build in?
So I think one of the areas we're seeing obviously a lot of growth is in when it comes to deep technology, right? I think that's an area. Data is, I think, another clear area that's that is growing. So when it comes to data engineering, data sciences, complex full stack engineering, enterprise engineering, as much as design and consulting as well. See, because for us, it's about making sure that we are relevantly present in all the capabilities that are required to ultimately deliver the value. Otherwise, it's like 4 legs of a stool, right? You've got to be balanced. Otherwise, it's not really a usable piece of furniture. It may look good, but it's not really usable.
The Indian market, when you look at it and compare it with the global market, where do you see it stands today? Because it's a huge market, there are a lot of opportunities. However, it comes with its own, constraints. So where do you see that standing, when in terms of tech, in terms of AI, in terms of AR and everything else?
Yeah, so, and again, I just want to clarify, India for us is not a primary focus as a revenue market, but I know for the Publicis group, it's a very strategic market. We have a deep presence here from a communications as well as media standpoint, as well as on the digital side as well. It's just in terms of priority as to where we see a larger opportunity right now to create impact. That's the reason we think about it this way. I just want to make sure it's not like we think it's not the market to be in. It's just a question of priority. And I think India is a fast growing market, definitely. I mean, is it a market that at some point in the future will kind of hit the trigger mark? Absolutely. Will that future be now or in the near term? I don't know. I mean, and that's what we're also waiting and watching and seeing where that kind of makes sense. I think some of the things, but as you look at the conversations, you look at the ambitions, I think of the corporate houses in India and most of the brands, I think it's definitely to start to, I think, speed up that journey, right, of where they're, because the disruption that's happening is usually going to be global. It's not going to be very localized.
What is the biggest fear today a corporate or say a traditional corporate has, and how will what it needs to do to get rid of that fear?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. See, I think the biggest fear is obviously, the fear of irrelevance. That's as true of human beings as it is true of corporates. And I think what's changed that fear has always been there. Businesses have always lived and died from time immemorial. But I think what's changed is usually you knew where to look for your competition and what the competition typically looked like.
You knew your market.
Correct. So today, what you don't know is, it's almost like you need to develop a 360 view and stay ever alert and, ready to kind of, make that move. But I actually look at it a little differently, because it's not about trying to not fail. It's about succeeding. So if you now look at what is the DNA of the firms that are succeeding today, they're called the disruptors or any other label of the month that comes on them. It's, I think, 2 or 3 things that they bring to the table. One, there is an obsessive focus on the consumer, right? It's an absolutely obsessive focus. Second, they are built in a manner to actually be agile, right from mindset through, their practices. And third, they have no fear of reinventing themselves, right? So if you now take those 3 attributes and say, how does that apply to companies in the, in the current state? Because, for example, if I told you that there is no reason that any of the large, car rental companies could not have come up with the Uber model years before Uber, right? So there's something that prevented them from, and that's usually your fear of reinventing yourself. One of the things we say is, and we do believe in, is that firms are very good at running their current business because they're in that strike zone. They're very, very good at knowing from where I am today, how do I adjacently grow, whether it's in profit, revenue, whatever it is. But they're usually not as good as being able to take a step back and reimagine their business, right? And I think so to me, that's one thing, is your ability to stand back and say, what if I needed to be a completely fundamentally different business in the next 2 to 4 years? And that comes by saying that what does my consumer really want versus what is convenient for me to try and give the consumer today. So do you put yourself at the point of constraint?
Yeah.
Or do you say all constraints, if I were to keep that aside, what would truly my consumer find valuable? And so if you look at, from the way, for example, if you're, some of the work that, we're doing with some of the quick service restaurants, for example, or airlines, right? It's interesting. An airline thinking about saying, this is the way an airport is typically laid out.
Yeah.
I can't really help it if you come in and wait in a long check-in line. And whereas if you think about it alternatively and say, every moment of time you spend in an airport in the check-in line is friction.
Yeah.
How do I take away the friction? What part of the check-in process can I finish before you even reach the airport? How do I minimize the time? How do I make sure that you have full transparency or visibility? For example, let's say into what happened to your bag, right? Any of us who travel, you're sitting in the plane wondering, has my bag made it to the flight or not? Why can't I see it in my app?
Yeah.
Right? So if you're obsessively thinking about the consumer, you're thinking about all of those aspects, right? So in that case, you are now thinking about the consumer. You're not afraid to reinvent yourself. Now we come to the big thing of how do you make yourself agile, right? And that is right from how do you design your organization to, more importantly, what we've seen is with a lot of the established players, because technology grew the way it grew in the last couple of decades or so, there is a need for them to kind of rewire themselves, reorient themselves. And so their enterprise agility when it comes to technology is one of the big areas that, again, we find a lot of opportunity, and we work with clients in their overall journey of transformation as to how do you just make yourself more agile at the core, as we call it.
I know we have discussed about it, that this is not a business or revenue market for you. But at any point in time, if the market grows substantially than what it is today, would you even look at revenue?
Absolutely. As I said, right, it's not that we ignore the market. For us as a Publicis group, we have a significant presence here. It's a question of where are we prioritizing our focus right now. It's a market we stay connected to, and we absolutely, it's truly on the radar. So if things were to change and we feel it's now, as a collective decision from a strategy standpoint, makes sense to focus on it, absolutely we would. We'd be excited to do that.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Thank you, and it was great speaking to you.
Likewise. Thank you.